Hello everyone, welcome to the first part of my discussion, Assessment of Student Learning. This is a refresher course by JMC Reviewer. All the notes are actually taken from JMC Reviewer. So let's start. We start with the basics. We'll define test, measurement, assessment, and evaluation. Test is simply the instrument designed to measure any quality, ability, skill, or knowledge. Measurement is the process of quantifying the degree. So we quantify. Assessment is the process of gathering or organizing data for us to be able to interpret and make a decision. And then evaluation is the process of systematic analysis in order to make sound judgment. So you are now making a judgment when you are on evaluation. Here is the result of your diagnostic test. So we have here a question: who among the teachers described below is doing assessment? 2 out of 13 correct responses. The first option, Mr. or Mrs. Myers, who is administering a test to her students. This is basically the test. The second option, Mr. Sagra, who is counting the scores obtained by the students in his test. This is measurement. The third option, Ms. Kim, who is computing the final grade of the students after completing all the requirements. This is already the assessment. And the last option, Prof. Diwag, who is planning for a remedial instruction after knowing the student's performance or knowing the students perform poorly. It's already a judgment. It's the evaluation. So the correct answer is the third option. We have another result. Mrs. Diwag is comparing measurement from evaluation. Which statement explains the difference? It's good that more than half of you were able to get it right. The correct answer is the first option. Measurement is assigning numerical value. That's correct. While evaluation is giving meaning to the numerical value. So that's simply the difference between the two. Another question. Mrs. Peters is judging the worth of the project of the students in her science class based on a set of criteria. That's evaluating. So testing, measuring, and assessing are incorrect. Take note of the term judging. That's evaluating. We have modes of assessment. There are actually 3. There are only 3. The traditional, performance-based, and the portfolio. If we say traditional, this is a pen and paper test. Most common examples are the standardized tests like the National Achievement Test, the NCAI. We also have the teacher-made test. One of the disadvantages of traditional, it's prone to cheating, and preparation of instrument is time-consuming. But the advantages, it's objective. Administration is easy because students can take the test at the same time. So that's traditional. It can provide tests on a number of group of people. We say performance, these are demo of skills, and sometimes this could be practical, oral, and projects. However, disadvantages, it's time consuming and it's sometimes subjective. Teachers become subjective of this kind of performance based. For portfolio, this is the gathering of multiple indicators of students' progress. You can say it's working portfolio, show portfolio, or documentary portfolio. It's also subjective. Sometimes teachers become subjective of this portfolio-based assessment. But advantage measures student growth and development and its intelligence fair in the sense that the multiple intelligence theory is being applied. So here is the question from your diagnostic test. In the context of the theory of multiple intelligence, which is a weakness of a paper pencil test? Unfortunately, only 2 out of 13 is able to get it right. Correct answer is the first choice. It puts non-linguistically intelligent at a disadvantage. What do we mean by this? If we look at the theory for multiple intelligence, there are actually a lot of intelligence for students. If we have a pen and paper test, normally we will only focus on the verbal linguistic side of this theory. And this logic smart, nature smart, self smart, picture smart, music, body, and people were already disregarded. So if we go back to this question, if we only focus on pen and paper, naturally, these students who have this intelligence are at a disadvantage. So that's the meaning of the first option. Next, if I have to use the most authentic method of assessment, which of these procedures should I consider? Well, definitely it's performance-based. Mr. Diwag is doing a performance-based assessment for today's lesson. Which of the following will most likely happen? Students are evaluated in one sitting. No, you cannot evaluate all the students in one sitting if it's a performance-based assessment. This might take days. Students do an actual demo of their skill. This is correct. Students are evaluated in the most objective manner. It's not actually objective. Sometimes performance-based are on subjective manner. And students are evaluated based on their varied evidence of learning. This is actually more on portfolio, varied evidences of learning, which is a good portfolio evidence of students' acquired knowledge and writing skills. Correct? This is reflective journal. Under which option is portfolio assessment based? Unfortunately, 0 out of 13 correct responses. So the first one, portfolio assessment is a dynamic assessment. Not really, not dynamic, not changing. Assessment should stress the reproduction of knowledge. Not really. An individual learner is adequately characterized by a test score. It says adequately characterized by a test score. This is pertaining to a pen and paper test. Well, it's not adequately characterized by that pen and paper test alone. So we have a better option here. It's inadequately characterized by the pen and paper test or by the performance base. That's why portfolio assessment is also being utilized. Now, there are 4 types of evaluation procedures. We have the first 2. Placement evaluation. This is done before the instruction, determines mastery of prerequisite skills and not graded. For summative evaluation, we have here examples like quarter exams, unit or chapter tests, and final exam. We have the third and the fourth. Formative evaluation, reinforce successful learning, not graded. Examples are very short quiz, like 5 points short quiz, formative evaluation. But still, sometimes these are recorded just to make sure that there's a reference of measurement for individual learners. Diagnostic evaluation, that's what we did actually. I gave you a 90-item diagnostic test. This is to determine recurring or persistent difficulties, searches for the underlying cause of these problems that do not respond to the first aid treatment, and helps formulate a plan for a detailed remedial instruction. Now, for placement evaluation and summative evaluation, it determines the extent of what the pupils have achieved or mastered in the objective of the intended instruction. For formative and diagnostic, well, both are administered during instruction and both are not graded. Let's look at some examples. At the beginning of the school year, the 6-year-old pupils were tested to find out who among them can already read. The result used to determine their sections. What kind of test was given? It's actually a placement test because the result will be used for their sections. So normally for section 1 learners, these learners are the performing learners, fast learners, and probably the section 10 learners are the slow learners. So it creates a placement for each incoming, I believe these are incoming grade 1 pupils. We also have the term PEPT. This is the Philippine Educational Placement Test. For example, an out-of-school youth individual never went to formal schooling and wanting to enter the formal schooling, DepEd. So DepEd will actually give that 20-year-old individual a PEPT, Philippine Educational Placement Test, and it will determine what kind of academic achievement or what kind of level the individual will go to. So normally, if it's a 20-year-old individual, it will fall to probably grade 7. So the PEPT will see if the homeschool children or out-of-school youth have the skills needed to enter formal schooling at a certain level. So kung makikita nyo doon sa mga Form 137 ng mga bata, become an advisor in the future. May mga option doon kung saan siya nagtapos. PEPT ba? Placement test ba yung kinuha niya or nagtapos siya ng formal education? Normally, mga grade 7 form, may mga option na ganun. I-check mo kung PEPT ba siya o graduate ba siya ng grade 6. Ganon, placement. Another example, after doing the exercises on verbs, the teacher gave a short quiz. Short quiz, it's formative. Who among the teachers below performed a diagnostic test? Tingnan natin. Miss Grace, who asked questions when the discussion was going on. This is a formative assessment. Mr. Peters, who gave a short quiz, another formative assessment. Miss Miranda, who gave 10-item test to find out specific lessons. Yan. The goal is to find out specific lessons. This is diagnostic. Mrs. Lopez, who administered a readiness test to the incoming grade 1. Readiness test is a placement test. Incoming grade 1, that's your cue. Incoming sila. And you would like to check whether they are ready or not. This is placement. Sometimes, pag grade 1 kasi, pinipili yung mga marunong na magbasa, nasa section 1. Yung hindi marunong magbasa, may May nangyari ng ganun sa DepEd. Ang tawag sa kanila ay Section Darwin. And this is actually grade 7 yata noon. Ito yung mainit na topic ng DepEd noon. Section Darwin, grade 7. Di sila marunong magbasa. Ang tanong ng mga teachers, papaano nakagraduate ng elementary ang mga. As in, no read, no write. So, ang ginawa lang ng teachers, nagsulat lang ng grade na 75. Hindi sila nagturo. Mainit na topic to noon, the Section Darwin. Miss Glen administered a test to her class and the result is positively skewed. Ito, medyo sa statistics na tayo. Positively skewed, ito yon, skewed to the right. So kapag positively skewed ang lumabas, mababa ang score, ibig sabihin. Now, kapag mababa ang score, normally, syempre, ito yung mga pre-test, diagnostic test, kagaya ng sa inyo, mababa yung result ninyo and it's positively skewed. It is expected na kapag mataas, post-test na yon kasi napag-aralan ng mga bata. Ito naman ay normal distribution. Kukunti lang nakakuha ng mababa, kukunti lang nakukuha ng mataas na score. Marami ang katamtaman. Normal ito na distribution. Ito ay skewed to the left, negatively skewed. Ito ay mataas. Maraming nakakuha ng mataas na score, kukunti lang nakakuha ng maliit na score. So ito tinatawag natin negatively skewed or skewed to the left. A quiz was given after reading a short story in your class. This is formative. Teacher gave a test to find out how familiar the class is with words they will meet in the story. Pwede rin, formative. Parang diagnostic siya, pero ang choices nyo lang naman ay formative and summative. So, hindi naman siya pwedeng summative. Periodical test is scheduled at the end of the month. Summative yan. Teacher determines how many have obtained 80%. Summative. Principles of high-quality assessment. We have clarity of learning targets. Dapat sinusunod natin yung mga verbs doon sa ating objectives. Dapat measurable siya. You cannot write something. Halimbawa, yung objective mo, understand what is verb. Understand is not clear. It's not measurable. So, dapat ayusin natin yung ating learning targets. Appropriateness of assessment methods. Ito, dapat appropriate nga naman. Kung traditional, pen and paper, pwede. Kung performance, baka mas maganda, performance-based or portfolio-based. We also have validity. Valid ba yung ginawa mong test? Reliability. Reliable ba? We'll actually do this validity and reliability on our course. Fairness. Fair ba sa mga iba ang intelligence? So, normally sa fairness, sinasabi natin, pag magbibigay ng assessment, wag lang pen and paper kasi maraming iba't ibang klase ng intelligence. So, pwedeng ang assessment nila ay in a form of song, dance, anything na under ng multiple intelligence. Hindi lang pen and paper. Yun ang sinasabi ng fairness. We have positive consequences and practicality and efficiency. Those are principles of high-quality assessment. We now go to learning objectives. Normally, you have 3 main objectives in your lesson plan: cognitive, affective, and psychomotor. We have the cognitive. We start with the first 3 are what we call the low order thinking skills, and the last 3 would be the higher order thinking skills. These are your verbs. Ito yung mga measurable na verbs. So, hindi ka pwedeng maglagay ng objectives mo na understand verb. Hindi siya measurable. So, ano ba dapat ang ipapalit mo sa understand? Pwede mong gamiting translate, explain, apply, mga ganyan. Use verb in communication. These are your cognitive domain learning outcomes. Normally, what we are aftering is this one. The higher order thinking skills. These are actually the product of learning already. Pagka low order thinking skills, wala pa siya sa product of learning. Nagkakaroon lang ng product of learning if they were able already to analyze, separate, integrate, assess, decide. An example, 2 teachers of the same grade level have set the following objectives for today's lesson. At the end of the period, so ito yung kanilang objective. At the end of the period, the students should be able to, first, construct, second, interpret. So dalawang objective, construct and interpret. To assess the attainment of the objectives, Teacher A required the students to construct a bar graph for the given set of data. Then she asked them to interpret this using a set of questions as guide. Teacher B presented a bar graph, then asked them to interpret this using also a set of guide questions, whose practice is acceptable based on the principles of assessment. So, sino sa kanila ang acceptable ang procedure? Teacher A ba or Teacher B? Going back to your objective, dalawa kasi, construct and interpret. So, ang ginawa ni Teacher A, ni-require niyang mag-construct ang mga students at saka mag-interpret. Si Teacher B naman, Hindi niya ni-require. Nag-present lang siya ng graph and then pina-interpret niya. So definitely, hindi ginawa ni Teacher B yung objective number 1. Hindi niya pina-construct yung mga bata. That is why the correct answer is Teacher A. Affective domain. So these are your categories: receiving, responding, valuing, organizing, and value characterization. These are your descriptions, and these are some measurable illustrative verbs for affective domain. So ito, magiging guide ninyo. Gamitin nyo sa paggawa ng learning objectives nyo for affective domain. Which is an example of affective learning outcome? Oh, magandang question ito. Kaya lang walang nakasagot sa inyo. So we have the first option: interpret stimuli from various modalities to provide data needed in making adjustment. Well, the first option, I think this is more on the cognitive domain because you are going to interpret from various modalities. Mag-interpret ka. The third option, appreciate the quality and worth of the story read. Well, it's more on affective. However, appreciate is not measurable. Hindi klaro itong third option. Looking at the second option, judge problem and issues in terms of situations involved than in terms of fixed dogmatic thinking. If we talk about fixed dogmatic thinking, ito kasi yung you live by the rules. So, halimbawa lang, ang issue natin ay ang mga squatters na nagtayo ng bahay sa gilid ng ilog. Bawal yon, ano? So by the book, by our rules and regulation, bawal talagang mag-squat sa tabi ng ilog. Halimbawa sa Pasig River, maraming squatters doon. Now, nabagyo sila, nawalan ng bahay at naanod ang mga kagamitan. Humingi sila ng tulong. Pag sinabing dogmatic thinking, sasabihin mo siguro, bakit kasi kayo nagtayo ng bahay dyan sa Pasig River? Sino bang nagsabi, bawal yan? Dogmatic yon. But if you judge a problem and issues in terms of situations, magiging affective na ito. So, magbibigay ka ng tulong. Magbibigay ka ng tulong dahil tao yun eh. Kawawa naman. Tulungan natin. So, that's judging problem and issues in terms of situation. Hindi dahil sa batas. Okay? So, that's affective learning outcome. Psychomotor domain. So these are your categories: imitation, manipulation, precision, articulation, and naturalization. These are some illustrative verbs that you could use. These are all measurable, and these are the descriptions. This one is the revised Bloom's taxonomy. Ito na yung ginagamit natin ngayon. It's actually in verb form. Nag-end siya now in ing. Ito yung noun form niya. Ito yung verb form niya, but we normally use this already. Remembering, understanding, applying. Itong first three na ito ay low order thinking skills. And then, analyzing, evaluating, creating. Ito yung higher order thinking skills. These are already the product of learning. Notice that in the revised Bloom's taxonomy, this evaluating is on the 5th level. But in the original Bloom's taxonomy in 1956, evaluation is on the top part. Pero nung na-revise siya, mas magandang nasa 5th na siya, evaluating, and then creating na yung pinakamataas. These three are all in higher order thinking skills. These are the product of learning. Ms. Kamba aims to measure a product of learning. Which of these objectives will she most likely set for her instructions? So, show positive attitude towards learning common nouns. Effective ito, no? Show positive attitude lang. Identify common nouns in a reading selection. Well, this is not yet a product of learning because it's under low order thinking skill. Similar with use a common noun in a sentence, still under a low order thinking skills. If we say construct, this is already creating. This is now on the higher order thinking skills. It's already a product of learning. We have different types of tests based on purpose. So it's psychological and educational. Psychological, we have aptitude tests, personality tests, intelligence tests. Educational naman, we have achievement tests, performance tests. Another type of test, scope of content, we have survey versus mastery. So survey, these are constructed by trained professionals. Mastery, typically constructed by teachers. See the difference? Language mode, verbal versus non-verbal. Words are used by students in attaching meaning to or responding to test items. Non-verbal students do not use words in attaching meaning to it. Okay, language mode. Types of tests, we have construction, standardized. These are normally done by professional. If we say professional writer, ito yung mga doctors. At saka yung standardized test na yun, dumaan na sa validity at saka reliability test. Pasadong-pasado. Mataas ang reliability, mataas ang validity. For informal, these are constructed by classroom teacher. Normally, mababa yung reliability at saka validity. Pero pag para gumanda, ang ginagawa ni teacher, kailangan niyang i-test yung reliability para tumaas. So, ano ba ang example ng standardized test? We have national achievement test. Those are all standardized tests. Pag sinabing classroom teacher, ito lang naman yung ginagawa ni teacher na quarterly exams or chapter test, mga ganun. During my first 5 years of teaching, yung mga ginagawa kong test, probably mababa ang validity at saka reliability. So, now that I am in my almost years of teaching, inaayos ko lahat ng questions ko para at least mataas ang validity at saka reliability. Kahit masabing informal pa rin siya, pero dapat mataas ang validity at saka reliability. Interpretation of result is usually norm reference. If we say norm reference, yung performance ng isang estudyante kino-compare sa student sa performance ng another student. If we say criterion reference, yung performance ng isang estudyante kino-compare doon sa set standards or sa learning competencies. Kung pasok ba ang performance ng isang bata. So, ganon ang pinagkaiba ng dalawa. Another one, manner of administration, individual and group. So, if we say individual, oral, or demo, actual demo skills. For group, ito, pasok talaga si paper and pen test. There. Effect of bias, objective and subjective. Yung sinasabi nating pen and paper test, those are objective type. Pag subjective naman, sometimes pasok doon si performance-based test at saka si portfolio. Types of tests, we have the power and speed test. Pag power test, ascending order yon from easy to difficult power test yon. Consists of series of items arranged in ascending order of difficulty. Kapag speed test naman, consists of items approximately equal of difficulty. So, pare-parehas siguro na easy, yan, speed test yan, or average, or pare-parehas na difficult. Format, we have selective. Ito yung multiple choice, true or false, and matching type. Meron kang pagpipilian. Pag supply naman, wala kang pagpipilian. So, we have short answer, completion, restricted essay. Yan. We also have interpretation, the norm reference, and the criterion average. Ito yung sinasabi ko kanina. Result is interpreted by comparing one student's performance with another student's performance. And for criterion reference, result is interpreted by comparing students' performance on a predefined standard. Yun yung learning competencies natin. Okay, that's the end of my part 1 discussion. Thank you for